Oh, yeah, have you ever had the feeling of looking at your future and simply not being able to see anything clearly? It's as if everyone around you knows exactly where you're going, while you try to look good on the outside, but inside you feel stuck, confused, or even behind in life. Perhaps you are experiencing this right now. And the hardest part isn't even the doubt about what to do. The hardest part is starting to believe that there's something wrong with you. Because when the future seems distant, when plans cease to make sense, and when even what once motivated you loses its shine, it's very easy to conclude that you've lost your purpose. But what if that feeling doesn't mean you're lost? What if there's a deeper explanation, spiritual and psychological, for what you're feeling? Many people silently carry the idea that they should have all the answers at this stage of life, that they should have already discovered their calling, found direction, built emotional, spiritual, and professional stability. And when that doesn't happen, a dangerous feeling arises, the feeling of falling behind. But there's something that almost no one talks about. Feeling lost doesn't always mean a lack of purpose. Sometimes it means transition. Sometimes it means that the old version of who you were can no longer support who you are becoming. And it is precisely in this space, between what no longer makes sense and what is still unclear, that one of the most uncomfortable emotions that exists is born: uncertainty. Psychologically, our brains are wired to seek predictability. We like to know what comes next. We like to feel in control. When the future seems uncertain, our minds interpret this as a threat. Anxiety arises, comparison, pressure, emotional exhaustion. Perhaps that's why you thought things like, "Am I wasting my life? Why does it seem like everyone else is making progress except me? Has God forgotten about me?" If any of these questions have crossed your mind, you're not alone. But there is also a spiritual side that we often ignore. Because not every period of silence means abandonment. Not all lack of clarity means a lack of direction. There are times when God isn't removing the path. He's transforming those who walk that path. And this process almost never feels comfortable. In fact, it often looks exactly the opposite. Confusion, wait, silence, a feeling of disconnection. But there's a huge difference between being directionless and being prepared. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt like you're trying to figure out the next step, but at the same time you feel like something inside you is changing and you still can't explain what it is? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. Because maybe the problem isn't that you've lost your purpose. Perhaps the problem is that you're trying to find new answers using an identity that no longer serves you at this stage of your life. And understanding this completely changes the way you see the future. And perhaps there's someone watching this video right now who needed to hear exactly that. Because for a long time you believed you needed to have everything resolved to feel peace. That you needed to see all the next steps before moving forward. But what if peace doesn't come from certainty, but from confidence? And I want to ask you a sincere question. When was the last time you stopped to admit, even if only to yourself, that maybe you're not lost, just tired of trying to figure everything out on your own? Because there is something very powerful when we realize that we are not the only ones experiencing this type of conflict. And that's why I want to open up a space here. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below describing what has resonated with you the most so far. I really want to know which part of this conversation best describes what you're feeling right now. It can be a simple sentence. Perhaps, "I'm learning to trust the process." Or, "My confusion doesn't define my future." Or even, "I'm in transition, not lost." Sometimes, writing down what we feel is the first step towards seeing more clearly what was hidden inside us. And there's something else you might not even imagine. Every comment, every like, and every person who decides to subscribe helps this type of message reach someone who is going through exactly this moment of silent confusion. Someone who may need to understand that feeling uncertain doesn't mean having lost their purpose. So, if you enjoy this type of content that connects emotions, mind, and faith in a profound and practical way, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This shows that you want to continue walking alongside this community and also helps this content reach a wider audience. Because in the end, maybe there are more people than we imagine looking to the future and silently wondering, is there something wrong with me? And perhaps, together, we'll discover that the answer is quite different from what it seems. Because what comes next begins precisely at the point where almost everyone misinterprets what they are feeling. Now I want to delve even deeper into the subject, because there's something that almost no one realizes when they start to feel lost about the future. Most of the time, the problem doesn't start in the future. It begins with the need for certainty. This might seem strange at first glance, but think about it for a moment. How many decisions have you failed to make while waiting to feel completely confident? How many opportunities have been missed because you believed you needed to see every detail before taking the next step? There is something within the human mind that constantly seeks predictability. Our brains like patterns. They like knowing what to expect. They like anticipating outcomes because it creates a sense of security. But there's an important detail. When the future becomes uncertain, our emotional system interprets this lack of answers as risk. And that's when many people start to feel anxiety, overthinking, difficulty making decisions, and that silent feeling of falling behind. But what seems like a lack of direction isn't always a lack of purpose. Sometimes it's just a discomfort of not being able to control what comes next. And that changes a lot of things. Perhaps you're trying to resolve a spiritual issue using only emotional control mechanisms. Perhaps you're waiting to feel certain before acting, when growth almost never works that way. Faith works differently. And here I'm not talking about that idea of ignoring emotions or pretending that everything is okay. No, faith does not eliminate questions. Faith changes the way you navigate questions. She doesn't promise to show the whole map. She teaches us to keep going even when we can't see all the details. And I know that this might seem uncomfortable, because our current mindset values speed, quick results, accurate decisions, and instant transformation. But some of the most profound changes happen precisely behind the scenes, in quiet places, in phases that seem slow. And perhaps there's another layer behind this feeling of being lost. Perhaps you're not without direction. Perhaps you are emotionally exhausted. There's a huge difference between not knowing where to go and not having energy to keep going. When someone spends too much time surviving emotionally, carrying pressure, comparisons, expectations, internal demands, they begin to lose touch with things that once seemed alive. Dreams cease to excite. Goals cease to make sense. Desires become confused, not because they disappeared, but that's because the heart went into survival mode. And when you're just trying to get through the day, thinking about the future starts to feel like a burden. Perhaps that's why you interpreted that emptiness as a lack of purpose. But there is a hidden truth in all of this. An emotionally exhausted person often doesn't need answers first. It needs restoration. It needs to reclaim internal space. You need to start breathing from the inside again. And it's interesting to realize that this appears so many times in biblical stories. Because when you read quickly, it seems like people of faith always knew exactly what to do. But when you look closely, you'll find a wait. You find moments of silence, moments of doubt, moments when people kept walking without understanding everything. And this shatters an expectation that many people hold. The idea that total clarity is a sign of spiritual maturity. Not always. There are periods when construction happens before understanding. There are times when you change on the inside before you realize the impact of those changes on the outside. But in the midst of all this, another silent trap appears. Comparison. Because while you're trying to understand your own journey, it seems like everyone else has already figured out their own path. Everyone seems to have clear decisions. Everyone seems to be making progress. But there is one thing that almost never comes up. You are comparing your emotional background to the more visible moments of other people. You know your doubts, but he only sees their results. And this comparison steals two things at the same time: your peace and your trust. Because little by little you start to believe that your worth depends on the speed at which you build something. As if achieving more meant being worth more. As if producing more meant being more important. But when identity depends solely on performance, any pause feels like a failure. Any waiting feels like delay. And perhaps that's precisely why some answers haven't arrived yet. Because there are times when clarity isn't taken away to punish you. It is simplified to develop something deeper. Dependence, patience, delivery. Things that seem small now, but that later become the foundation for bigger decisions. And perhaps the question you need to ask yourself today is not, what should I do from now on? Perhaps it is, who am I becoming as I try to figure it out? Because sometimes the future isn't clear when you find an answer. Sometimes it starts to appear when you begin to transform. Comment below, that makes sense to me. And perhaps, after all this, the question will no longer be whether you are lost. Perhaps the question now is, what changes within you when you stop interpreting confusion as failure and begin to see this moment as part of the process? Because some answers aren't enough to end the journey. They arrive to give us enough courage to continue. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this. Feeling like you don't have all the answers today doesn't mean you don't have a future. Not all silence is absence. Not all waiting is delay. Not every unclear phase is a sign that you've strayed from the path. Sometimes you're just learning to walk a different way. And if this video resonated with something you were feeling but hadn't yet been able to put into words, tell me in the comments. He writes, "Today I choose to trust the process and keep moving forward." I enjoy reading these messages because they show that there's an entire community discovering that you don't need to have everything solved in order to keep moving forward. If this type of conversation helps you better understand your emotions in the light of faith, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. The idea is not to provide ready-made answers. It's about building together this space where we learn that understanding what we feel can be the beginning of a much deeper change. And if at any point during this video you thought, it seems like they were describing exactly what I'm going through, leave a like, not just because of the algorithm, but because it shows that this type of content makes sense and deserves to continue existing. And before leaving, there's a video here that perfectly complements this conversation and might connect some pieces that are perhaps still missing within you. Click and stay with me there.